I thought I was running away from my family. I was wrong. 3 years after my father was declared dead, I discovered he was alive, and my mother had known the entire time. Then my brother sent me one message. Alina, please don't believe Mom. But the biggest shock came when I found a photograph of myself standing beside a man everyone told me had already died. My mother looked at me and said, "You were never supposed to remember what happened that night. If you were in my position, would you trust your mother? Or the evidence?" Tell me in the comments, and if you want to find out what really happened, subscribe and stay until the end. I had one foot on the train when my mother called and said, "Alina, if you get on that train, someone will know exactly where you are." I froze. It was 2:03 in the morning at Leicester railway station, and I was carrying everything I had decided I needed to start over. One black backpack, my passport, a phone charger, £300 in cash, and my father's photograph. My name is Alina Singh. I was 26 that night. My mother, Vera Singh, was a former emergency room nurse who still checked every lock twice before sleeping. My younger brother, Rohan, worked at our family printing business. My father, Devraj, had died 3 years earlier in what everyone called a road accident. My uncle, Karav Bussin, had spent 6 months trying to take what my father left behind. That was why I was running. 3 weeks earlier, Karav had placed a folder in front of me at Singh Press. "Your father wanted the shares transferred to me. My father died 3 years ago. Show me his instructions." His expression hardened. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I signed nothing. That evening I told my mother what had happened. She put down her knife. "If he asks you to sign anything, don't." "I won't." "If someone follows you, don't come home." I stared at her. "Why?" "Because I may not be able to protect you if they know I helped you." I thought she was being dramatic. That was the mistake I regretted most. Now, sitting at Leicester Station 3 nights later, I understood why she had said it. My phone was still against my ear. "Mom, I'm at the station." "I know." "How?" Silence. Then she said, "Because someone has been watching the house." My chest tightened. "Who?" "I don't know." "You're lying." "I wish I were." The station announcement echoed above me. My train was ready. I looked toward the platform entrance. A man in a dark jacket stood near the ticket machines, staring at me. "Mom," I whispered, "there's someone here. Don't turn around again." I had already turned. The man was walking toward me. "Go to platform 5, my mother said. "Take the train to Manchester." "You just told me to leave." "I told you to run." "Why Manchester?" "Because I have someone there." "Who?" "Her name is Mara Quill." The man was getting closer. "Mom, what is happening?" "You found something you were never supposed to find." "I didn't find anything." "You found your father's ledger." "What ledger?" She did not answer. The call ended. I moved toward platform 5. The man followed. I reached the train as the doors closed between us. He did not chase it. He simply watched me through the glass, lifted his phone and said, "She got on." At 3:11 my phone vibrated. "Do not use your bank card. Do not tell Rohan where you are. If Mara asks whether you know why you are there, say no." Why would my mother warn me about Mara? At 4:06 I arrived in Manchester and took a cash-paid taxi to Belmere House. A woman in her 40s opened the door before I knocked. She had short dark hair, tired eyes, and a scar near her left eyebrow. "You're Alina." It wasn't a question. I stepped back. "How do you know me?" "Mara Quill." She opened the door wider. "Your mother called me 3 years ago." I stared at her. 3 years ago? After your father died. I entered slowly. She walked to a desk and picked up a brown envelope. My name was written across the front. I recognized the handwriting immediately. My mother's. "She told me to give you this only if you arrived alone." I thought she said she had someone here. "She did." "Who?" Mara looked at me. "Me." I opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph of my father standing beside Karav outside Singh Press. I had seen it before. But this copy had something written on the back. "Your father did not die by accident." I stopped breathing. Mara watched my face. "You didn't know?" "No." She took another document from the desk. It was a police report. I read the first page. The report said my father's car left the road at 11:42 p.m. But a traffic camera had recorded a red delivery van passing the crash site at 11:39. Why wasn't this in the report? The footage disappeared. Who deleted it? We don't know. You keep saying that. Because your mother spent 3 years trying to find out. I turned another page. There was a handwritten note. Do not trust Karev. But do not assume he killed Devraj. I looked up. So my uncle didn't kill my father? Mara shook her head. That is what your mother wants you to believe until you see the rest. What does that mean? Before she could answer, a car stopped outside. Mara went pale and turned off the lights. Stay here. The car door opened. 2 men stepped onto the pavement, then a third. Mara moved toward the back. There's a second exit. Where are we going? Somewhere your mother prepared before you were born. We ran through the kitchen into an alley as the front door slammed open. Someone shouted, "Find her." Mara pulled me into a waiting car. As she started the engine, my phone rang. My mother's name appeared on the screen. I answered immediately. Mom. Her voice was barely audible. Alina, don't trust Mara. I looked at the woman driving. Mara's hands tightened around the steering wheel. My mother continued. She isn't the person I told you about. The line went dead. Mara accelerated into the empty street. I stared at her. She didn't look at me. After several seconds, she said, "Your mother told you that because she knew they were listening." Who? Mara finally looked at me. The same people who killed your father. Then she reached under the driver's seat and pulled out a second envelope. On it was a date. Tomorrow. And beneath the date in my mother's handwriting were 7 words. Alina, if you are reading this, I failed. I spent the next 20 minutes asking Mara the same question in different ways. Where is my mother? I don't know. Then why does she have your number? I've known Vera for years. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. That answer frightened me more than a lie would have. Mara drove north through empty streets while rain struck the windshield. It was almost 5 in the morning. I had been awake all night, carrying a secret I still did not understand, while my mother was somewhere I could not reach. Finally, Mara turned into a narrow industrial estate and stopped beside a shuttered furniture warehouse. We're staying here until daylight. You brought me to a warehouse? You wanted somewhere no one would expect. She opened a side door with a key. Inside were folding tables, old filing cabinets, bottled water, and 3 monitors connected to a laptop. I stared at the equipment. This isn't a guest house. No. What is this? A place your mother used when she needed to disappear. I turned toward her. How long has she been disappearing? Mara hesitated. 3 years. At 5:32, Mara opened a file on the laptop. Your father's last phone call came from a hospital. I leaned closer. The timestamp was 10:51 p.m., less than an hour before the crash. Who did he call? Your mother. My throat tightened. Then why did she tell me he died at 11:42? She didn't. What? The police report says the crash was at 11:42. Your mother always said he called her at 10:51. I looked at her. So the report was wrong. Not exactly. Mara enlarged the photograph. A hospital employee was standing behind my father. I recognized him. Dr. Selwyn Vark. Mara nodded. He was the hospital director. What did he want from Dad? That's what your father was trying to prove. Mara opened another file. It contained invoices from Singh Press. At first they looked ordinary. Medical labels. Packaging. Equipment certificates. Then I noticed the quantities. Why would a hospital need 10,000 replacement safety labels? It wouldn't. She opened a second spreadsheet. The labels had been shipped to hospitals across 3 counties. Were they fake? Yes. I stared at her. Fake labels on medical equipment? Equipment that had failed safety inspections. My hands went cold. People were using them? We don't know how many. A message appeared on the screen. Stop looking. Mara immediately disconnected the laptop. Who sent that? I don't know. You said you were prepared. I was. Then prepare better. She almost smiled. You sound like your mother. I didn't find that funny. At 7:10 we left the warehouse and drove to a small cafe near the river. Mara chose a table at the back. I barely touched my coffee. Tell me everything. She looked at me for a long time. Your father discovered someone was using Singh Press to produce counterfeit certification labels. He planned to expose them. Who? Dr. Selwyn Vark was involved. And Karev. Karev knew something was wrong. Was he involved? Yes. My stomach dropped. How? He blackmailed Selwyn. For money. Yes. So my uncle had not been innocent. He had known about the scheme and chosen to profit from it. Did he kill my father? No. How can you be sure? Because Karev was the person who gave your mother the first piece of evidence. That made no sense. Why would he help her? Because his son was dead. What does his son have to do with this? Nikhil Busan discovered the fake certifications before your father did. Nikhil? Mara nodded. He was 24 when he died. Everyone said he overdosed. Everyone was wrong. Mara placed a medical report on the table. There was no evidence of long-term drug use. Then how did he die? Poisoning. I couldn't speak. Who poisoned him? That is what your mother spent 3 years trying to prove. I pushed the report away. Why? Because the toxicology report was changed. By whom? Mara looked at me. Someone with access to the hospital records. I thought of Selwyn. But Mara shook her head. Not Selwyn. She turned the report over. A signature appeared at the bottom. Ilira Sethi, Chief Financial Officer of the Hospital Trust. Ilira had been at my father's funeral. She had hugged my mother and told me, "Your father was a good man." I suddenly felt sick. I wanted to believe there was a simple explanation. But every answer created another question, and every question led back to my mother. At 9:45, Mara took me to an old storage facility outside the city. Locker 214 contained 6 boxes. The first held hospital invoices. The second held photographs. The third held audio tapes. The fourth contained my father's personal files. The fifth was empty. The sixth had my name on it. I opened it. Inside was a small silver key and a note. The person who seems guilty may not be the person who caused this. Underneath, another sentence had been crossed out. I could still read it. Vera knows who did it. I looked at Mara. You knew this was here. I knew there was a box. Why did my mother leave it for me? Because she expected you to find it eventually. I held up the key. What does this open? Mara didn't answer. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. She answered. A man's voice said, "Tell Alina to stop." Mara ended the call. Then the warehouse lights went out. Someone had cut the power. Mara grabbed my arm. Get down. A loud crash came from the corridor. Then another. A bullet struck the metal door above us. It covered my mouth. Mara pulled me behind a stack of boxes. Are they police? No. How do you know? Police knock first. We waited in darkness. Footsteps moved closer. Then a voice called my name. Alina Singh. I recognized it. My uncle. Karev. Mara whispered, "Don't answer." His voice came again. Your mother has been lying to you. I stood despite Mara trying to hold me down. Karev. Silence. Then he said, "Your father wasn't killed because of the company." I stared at the door. Then why? His answer came slowly. Because he found out what happened to Nikhil. The footsteps moved away. A door slammed. By the time Mara reached the corridor, Karev was gone. Mara closed the warehouse door behind us. We need to leave. I need answers. You'll get them. From who? From the person who still has the original recording. I stared at her. You. She shook her head. Your mother. We drove back toward Leicester just after noon. Rain had stopped, but the roads were crowded. I kept looking through the rear window, expecting Karev's car to appear. It didn't. That made me more nervous. At 1:20 p.m., Mara took me to a small apartment above a closed pharmacy. She said it belonged to someone she trusted. The person waiting inside was an elderly man named Oren Daster. He had worked with my father for nearly 20 years. He looked at me and said, "You have Devraj's eyes." I had heard that before. What do you know about the night he died? Oren looked at Mara. She didn't tell you? Tell me what? He unlocked a drawer and removed a cassette. I was the last person your father called before he left the hospital. My hands tightened. What did he say? He said, "If Vera asks you to hide the machine, don't give it to her." I looked at Mara. What machine? Oren placed an old photograph on the table. It showed a printing machine from Sing Press. The same machine still stood in the basement of my childhood home. The press. Not the press. Something hidden inside it. I remembered the metal box my father had taught me to open when I was 8. What was inside? Evidence. Against Selwyn? Against everyone. Oren told us that my father had discovered counterfeit certification labels were only one part of the operation. Someone had been using legitimate hospital orders to move restricted medical equipment between warehouses. The labels made defective equipment appear approved. The money from those shipments was then transferred through companies connected to the hospital trust. And care of. He discovered the money trail. Why did he blackmail Selwyn? Because he wanted money. Oren's answer was blunt. He was desperate. His businesses were failing. He saw an opportunity. So he knew people could die? Yes. I felt anger rising. Then why did he help my mother? Because his son died. Again Nickel's name came up. Oren explained that Nickel had found a shipment record that linked Illyra to a warehouse outside Birmingham. He confronted her. 2 days later he was dead. Your father blamed himself, Oren said. Why? Because Nickel had asked him for help. I looked down. My father had been trying to protect someone else's son while hiding the danger from his own family. What about my mother? Oren's expression changed. Your mother wanted Devraj to go to the police. Then why didn't he? Because he believed someone inside the police had been paid. That explained the missing traffic footage. It also explained why my mother had told me not to trust anyone. At 3:40 p.m., we returned to Sing Press. The building had been closed since my father's death. Dust covered the front counter, but the old machines were still in place. I walked downstairs alone. The basement smelled of paper and oil. My father's printing machine stood against the wall. I ran my fingers over the metal frame. A memory came back. I was 8 years old, sitting beside him while he showed me how to count the machine's settings. 3 clicks, he had said. Then 4. I remembered the cassette from the previous night. 3 clicks. Then 4. I opened the side panel. Nothing. Maura entered. Try underneath. I crouched. There was a small lock. The silver key from my mother's box fit perfectly. The panel opened. Inside was a narrow compartment. There was a hard drive. And beneath it another cassette. My name was written on the label. I put it into the old recorder. My father's voice filled the basement. Alina, if you're hearing this, you're old enough to understand why I lied. I stopped breathing. He continued. I told your mother I would disappear if things became dangerous. I didn't tell her that I had already made copies of the evidence. A chair scraped in the recording. Then my mother's voice. Devraj, you can't do this alone. I have no choice. You have a daughter. I know. Then think about her. I am thinking about her. That's why I need you to make her hate me if I don't come home. My eyes filled with tears. The recording continued. Illyra knows about the evidence. My mother's voice became quiet. How? Nickel told her before he died. There was a long pause. Then my father said something that made me stand up. Illyra didn't kill Nickel. I stared at the recorder. Someone else did. The tape continued. I know who. A loud noise interrupted the recording. Then my father said, Vera, if anything happens to me, never tell Alina the name. The recording ended. I looked at Mara. Who killed Nickel? I don't know. But Dad did. Yes. And my mother knows. Yes. I rewound the tape. There was something underneath the final words. A faint electronic tone. Mara listened. That's not part of the recording. What is it? She connected the cassette player to a laptop. After cleaning the audio, a second voice became audible. A woman's voice. Only one sentence. Devraj, you should have listened to your wife. My mother. I looked at Mara. That isn't my mother's voice. She shook her head. No. The voice sounded similar, but it wasn't hers. Then Mara recognized it. It's Illyra. I stood. She was in the room. Apparently. The implication was terrifying. Illyra had access to the recording. She had been close enough to hear my father's warning. But there was another problem. If Illyra knew about the recording, why had she allowed it to survive? Unless she hadn't. I looked at the hard drive. Maybe this isn't the original. Mara nodded. Your father made copies. I opened the files. There were hundreds. Invoices. Photographs. Audio. Bank transfers. Names. Then I saw a folder marked VSing. I opened it. It contained surveillance photographs of my mother. Not from 3 years ago. From the last 6 months. I drove toward the railway yard alone because I wanted whoever was watching me to believe I had ignored every warning. That was not true. Mara was 3 cars behind me. Inspector Tomas Wren was somewhere ahead, following a route we had agreed on without telling each other where we would wait. I carried no weapon. The original hard drive was hidden under my spare tire, while copies of the evidence were already with a lawyer. If I disappeared, the files would be released. At 10:17 p.m. I reached the abandoned maintenance yard. The gates were open. I parked beside a broken signal box and stepped out. Mom. No answer. The yard was dark. Old tracks disappeared into weeds. A maintenance shed stood 50 meters away with one light burning above the door. I walked toward it. Then I heard my mother's voice. Alina, stop. I stopped. She stepped from behind the shed. Her hair was wet, her coat was torn, and there was a bruise near her cheek. Mom. I ran toward her. She raised one hand. Don't. I stopped. Are you hurt? I'm fine. You're bleeding. It's nothing. I looked past her. You said someone had you. Ilora did. Then where is she? My mother looked toward the tracks. She isn't here. That answer made no sense. Who brought you? I came here myself. Why? She stared at me. Because I wanted to know whether you would come. I felt my anger rise. You used me as bait? I needed to know who was following you. You could have told me. I tried. You told me not to trust Mara. Because Mara was being watched. Then tell me the truth now. She looked exhausted. Your father did not die in the crash. I could barely hear her. What? He was alive when the car went over the road. My mother sat on the concrete step. I remained standing. Then how did he die? He was taken from the crash site. By whom? Karov. I stared at her. My uncle had told me my father was killed because of Nikol. Now my mother was telling me something else. Why would Karov take Dad? To save him. I laughed once without humor. Karov tried to steal Dad's company. Yes. He blackmailed Selwyn. Yes. He knew about the fraud. Yes. And you still say he was trying to save Dad? My mother nodded. He had made terrible choices. But when he realized Ilora was going to kill your father, he tried to get him out. Did he succeed? No. The answer came too quickly. What happened? He took Devraj to a private clinic. Which one? An old clinic near Nottingham. Then why wasn't Dad there when the police arrived? Because Ilora found him. My mother told me that Karov had arranged for my father to receive treatment under another name. But someone at the clinic accessed the admission records within an hour. That person called Ilora. She arrived before midnight. My father was moved again. After that he disappeared. I felt sick. You spent 3 years looking for his body? Yes. Did you find it? My mother looked at the ground. No. You don't know if Dad is dead. She did not answer. The silence was enough. For 3 years I had grieved a man who might not have died that night. Why did everyone tell me Dad was dead? Because I needed you to believe it. Why? Because if anyone knew Devraj might still be alive, they would use you to find him. I could not process it. Then a voice came from the shed. She is telling you the truth. Karov stepped into the light. He looked older. I moved away from him. You. He stopped. I know what you think. I don't care. You should. Karov held out a small envelope. Your father gave me this. I did not take it. When? The night he disappeared. What does it say? Read it. I took the envelope. Inside was a single page. My father's handwriting was unmistakable. Karov, if Alina ever learns the truth, tell her one thing. I did not trust the police and I did not trust Ilora. I trusted Vera. My eyes filled with tears. Then I saw the final line. But if Vera tells her I am dead, she must believe her. I looked at my mother. Why would Dad want that? Because he knew what was coming. Headlights appeared at the far end of the yard. Karev swore. They found us. Mara's car came through the gate. He jumped out. Alina, get down. A shot struck the metal shed. My mother pulled me behind a barrier. Tomas arrived seconds later from the opposite entrance. 3 vehicles entered the yard. Men stepped out. They were not police. One of them shouted, Vera, give us the drive. My mother looked at me. What drive? I understood immediately. They think I have the hard drive. Karev looked at her. Do they know about the copies? No. Mara whispered, let them think they are right. Tomas moved toward the vehicles. Police. Drop your weapons. The men fired. Chaos erupted. I crouched beside my mother while Mara dragged us toward the maintenance shed. Inside was an old control room. My mother locked the door. Listen to me, she said. Not now. Alina, this is the part one couldn't tell you. What? She took a small memory card from inside her coat. Ilira isn't the person who ordered your father's death. I stared at her. Then who did? My mother looked at Karev. He closed his eyes. Tell her, my mother said. Karev swallowed. The order came from someone in your family. I went cold. Who? He looked directly at me. Your brother. I laughed. No. Rohan was there that night. That is impossible. He was 17. He didn't understand. My mother grabbed my arm. Alina, listen. Rohan did not kill your father. Then what did he do? He gave them the location. The gunfire outside stopped. Nobody moved. Then my phone vibrated. A message from Rohan. Lena, please don't believe Mom. A second message followed. She has been lying to you since Dad died. I looked at her. She looked at my phone. Then another message appeared. I know where Dad is. I stopped breathing. 3 years after my father's supposed death, my brother had just told me he knew where he was. And before I could reply, the lights in the control room went out. I didn't answer Rohan's message. Then someone knocked. 3 times. My mother whispered, don't open it. A man's voice came through the door. Alina, it's Rohan. My stomach tightened. Prove it, I said. Silence. Then he said, when you were 9, Dad taught us how to use the old press. You broke the emergency switch and blamed me. I almost smiled. I unlocked the door. Rohan stepped inside. He looked exhausted. His jacket was soaked and there was a cut above his eyebrow. My mother immediately pulled him into a hug. He pushed her away. Don't. She stared at him. Rohan. You lied to her. My mother said nothing. I stepped between them. Tell me everything. Rohan looked at me. Dad is alive. Where? I don't know exactly. I know where he was taken. I don't know where he is now. Rohan sat on an old chair. 3 years ago, Dad called me from the hospital. He told me not to tell Mom. Why? Because he thought someone was listening to her phone. I looked at my mother. She closed her eyes. Rohan continued. Dad told me to send him a location if I saw a black van near the house. Rohan said that on the night of the crash he saw the black van outside our house. He followed it without telling anyone. The van went to an old private clinic. He saw Karev carrying my father inside. Dad was injured? Badly. Did he speak? Barely. Rohan said Karev told him to leave. But Rohan stayed nearby. Hours later, Ilira arrived. Then someone else came. Rohan refused to name that person. Who? I was 17. I was scared. You were there. Yes. And you gave them the location. I thought I was helping Dad. My mother interrupted. Rohan didn't know who was coming. Rohan turned toward her. You knew. I suspected. You sent them there. I sent Karev. No. You sent Ilira. I looked between them. What 3? Rohan answered. She gave Ilira the clinic location. He raised one finger. She destroyed the original police report. Another. She told us Dad was dead. Then he lowered his hand. But none of those things explain why she kept protecting Ilira. My mother looked at me. Because Ilira had your father. I couldn't breathe. You knew Dad was alive? For 6 months. The room seemed to shrink. You knew Dad was alive for 6 months and never told me? I was trying to get him back. You could have told me. They threatened you. Who? Ilira. What did she threaten? My mother took out her phone. She opened a photograph. It showed me leaving university 6 years earlier. Another showed Rohan outside Singh Press. Another showed our house. They had been watching us for years. I stared at the photographs. Why didn't you go to the police? Because the police were compromised. One of those officers had handled my father's crash investigation. My mother's lies suddenly looked different. They were still lies, but they had been built around fear. Mara looked at Rohan. What happened after the clinic? Rohan's face tightened. I followed Ilira's car. Where? To the river port. My heart stopped. Dad was there. Yes. Rohan said he saw Ilira meet a man at the port. The man wore a hospital uniform. They transferred my father from one vehicle to another. Then the second vehicle drove toward Birmingham. Rohan followed. But you said you didn't know where Dad was now. I don't. What happened? The car disappeared. Where? Inside an underground parking structure. I looked at Mara. Which one? Birmingham General. Mara shook her head. That hospital was closed 8 years ago. Rohan nodded. Exactly. I remembered the surveillance photograph from my father's hard drive. My mother entering an abandoned hospital parking garage 2 days earlier. He had been there. I turned to her. You went there? Yes. Why? To find Devraj. Did you? I found his room. My heart raced. His room. My mother reached into her coat and pulled out a hospital bracelet. The name printed on it was not Devraj Singh. It said Patient 417. Where is he? I don't know. Mom. I arrived after they moved him. She looked at Rohan. But I found something. She handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a medical transfer record. Patient 417 had been transferred 6 months earlier. Destination: Belmere Neurological Institute. I stared at the words. Belmere. The same name as the guest house where Mara had taken me. I turned toward Mara. Her face had gone completely pale. What? She shook her head. I never told you this. What? Belmere House wasn't just a safe house. She stepped toward me. It was owned by the Neurological Institute. I felt cold. The place where you took me was part of the same property. My mother looked at Mara. You knew. I knew the building. I didn't know your father was connected to it. A heavy sound came from outside. The men had broken through the main entrance. Tomas raised his weapon. We have to move. Rohan grabbed my arm. Alina, there is one more thing. What? Dad left something for you. He pulled a small key from his pocket. I recognized it immediately. It was identical to the key my mother had given me. Where did you get this? Dad gave it to me the night before the crash. I stared at him. Why didn't you tell me? Because Mom told me never to. I looked at my mother. She nodded slowly. I was trying to keep you alive. The door shook. Someone shouted from the corridor. Open up. Rohan moved closer. There's a locker at Belmere Institute. What is inside? I don't know. Then how do you know Dad left it? Because he told me one thing. What? Rohan looked at me. He said, when Alina is old enough to know why I disappeared, give her the key. The door began to splinter. Tomas shouted for everyone to move. We escaped through a narrow maintenance tunnel and emerged behind the railway yard. By 1:20 a.m., we were driving toward Birmingham. Nobody spoke. Then my phone buzzed. A new message had arrived from an unknown number. There was a photograph. It showed my father sitting in a hospital bed. He looked older, thinner, but alive. For 3 years I believed my father was dead. Now I was driving with my mother and brother toward an abandoned neurological institute where a locker might contain the reason he disappeared. I should have been relieved. Instead, I was afraid of my mother. At 2:05 a.m., we reached Belmere Neurological Institute. Most windows were boarded up, but one section still had electricity. Mara parked behind a delivery building while Tomas checked the entrance. We have 10 minutes, he said. My mother stayed in the car. I opened her door. You said you made the worst decision of your life here. I did. Then you're coming with us. You may hate me afterward. I already spent 3 years thinking you hated me. Her eyes filled with tears. That wasn't the same. We entered through a service door. The corridors smelled of disinfectant. Tomas led us downstairs. The old patient wing was almost completely dark. Then we found room 417. My hands shook as I inserted the key. Turned. Inside was a small locker beside an empty bed. I opened it. There was only a black notebook, 3 photographs, and a sealed envelope. The first photograph showed my father alive in that room. The second showed my mother beside his bed. The third showed Ilora entering the building. I opened the notebook. Every page contained dates, medication, and names. The first entry was written by my mother. Day 1. Devraj is alive. He cannot walk. He does not know where he is. I turned the page. Day 12. Ilora believes he is dead. Another page said. Day 31. Karev has agreed to cooperate. Then I reached day 89. The handwriting changed. Day 89. Devraj remembers what happened to Nikhil. Rohan leaned over. What does it say? I turned the page. He says Nikhil was not poisoned by Ilora. He was poisoned by someone who had access to our home. My heart sank. Someone from our family. I read the next page. Devraj believes Rohan may have seen the person. I looked at my brother. You knew. I saw someone leaving the house. I was 17. It was dark. Who? Uncle Karev. The notebook slipped from my hands. Karev had been inside our house that night. But the next page changed everything. Karev did not poison Nikhil. He came to warn Devraj. Then I heard footsteps. Tomas raised his weapon. Stay behind me. The footsteps stopped. A man's voice said, Alina. I knew it. My father's voice. I ran. A man stood beneath the emergency light. Older. Thinner. His hair was gray. But I knew his face. Dad. He looked at me. Alina. I could not move. He smiled. You got tall. I started crying. He walked toward me slowly. I touched his face. You're alive. Yes. Mom knew. Yes. You let me believe you were dead. I know. I slapped him. You let me grieve you. I had no choice. You always had a choice. My mother appeared behind me. He faced my mother. Vera. He started crying. You brought her here, he said. She found the locker. I was hoping she never would. I looked between them. What happened to you? He told me that after the crash, Karev took him to a private clinic. Ilora discovered him, but my mother moved him to Belmir Institute before she could reach him. The institute was owned by a charity controlled by my mother. She hid him there for 6 months. Then someone found the location. For 3 years he lived under false names in protected facilities while my mother tried to identify the person who kept finding him. Who was it? I asked. My father looked at Rohan. Someone who had access to our family. I thought of Karev. Not Karev, he said. My mother stepped forward. Devraj, it's time. My father took the sealed envelope from the locker. This contains the original record of what happened the night Nikhil died. I opened it. Nikhil had been poisoned at our house, not the hospital. The poison was in a bottle of medication. The prescription carried my mother's signature. I stared at her. I didn't prescribe it, she said, crying. Then why is your signature there? Someone copied it. My father said, we know who. He opened another document. The name was Rohan Singh. I turned toward my brother. I didn't do it, he said. My mother grabbed his arm. Tell her. I took the medication to Nikhil, Rohan said. He was sick. I thought it was his medicine. I stepped backward. Who gave it to you? Rohan looked at my mother. She did. My mother froze. What? You gave me the bottle. I never. You did. My father stepped between them. Vera, stop. She looked at him. I don't remember. You were drugged. My father explained that my mother had been given a sedative by someone she trusted, leaving several hours of her memory incomplete. Someone had used her signature and medication cabinet, then planted evidence to make it look like she had ordered Nikhil's death. I asked the question I was afraid to ask. Who? Before my father could answer, the lights went out. Someone shouted from downstairs. Devraj. My father's face changed. We have to leave. Outside 3 cars were waiting. The third was black. Its headlights turned on. My father stopped. I know that car. Whose is it? He looked at my mother. She whispered, Ilora. The car accelerated toward us. Tomas shouted as everyone scattered. The vehicle crashed through the gate and stopped. The driver's door opened. Ilora stepped out. She wasn't holding a weapon. She was holding a photograph. She looked directly at my father. You should have stayed dead. Then she turned to me. Because now you get to learn what your mother did to keep you alive. She threw the photograph at my feet. It showed me at 17. Standing beside a hospital bed. And beside me was Nikhil. Alive. The date was 2 days after everyone had told me he was already dead. I looked at my mother. She went white. My father whispered, Alina, don't believe that photograph. Ilora smiled. Ask your mother why you were there. For the first time my mother looked terrified. And I realized the final secret was not about my father's disappearance. It was about me.